What is up, Steelers Nation? Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk live from St. Vincent College here in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. I am Noah Schreckbein. Join with me in person today. Very excited to be here is my man, producer Nick Belsky. Find us on youtube.com/All Steelers Talk and subscribe anywhere you get your podcast. Today was a lively one, my friends. It was as crazy as it gets when it comes to the Pittsburgh Steelers training camp and all the news surrounding them. Is Brandon Aiyuk coming to the Pittsburgh Steelers? Is he going to the Cleveland Browns? Have the New England Patriots snuck their way into seemingly the craziest idea you could come up with when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers all-pro wide receiver? Wild times when it comes to the trade market. We'll dive into everything that is going on, an old-fashioned source off, and then the Steelers hit the field and things just got crazier. Russell Wilson returned for pretty much a full day of participation here at St. Vincent College. It was still a bit of an easement into what is expected over the next couple of days, but it was a massive step forward. And, well, it was a big day for the quarterback competition. We're going to dive into that. And then, like we do every day, we will answer all of your questions. So make sure that you toss them in the chat. Nick, your first day out here. It was a good one. It was a good day to be out here for sure. How you feeling, my friend? How's your first training camp practice on the field in person?
It was great. I mean, I got here early this morning. I was very excited, and the first thing I see is Pat Meyer coming in on his motorcycle, and I said, "You know what? I've made it. I've made it, and I'm very excited." And that started the day off on the right foot, and then it just went up from there. It was a really fun practice to be at, and obviously getting to talk to everybody in person, getting to talk a little bit to Troy Faltanu, getting to talk to Zach Frazier, especially after what he was able to do on the field today. It was a good day at Steelers practice.
Yeah, it was as good as it gets. And I mean, for the last 24 hours, just about now, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been all over the internet. And if you have been following along, man, dude, you have been refreshing Twitter every second for, well, the last 24 hours. And as I say that, Adam Schefter tweets, Steelers and 49ers re-engaged in conversations midday today regarding Brandon Aiyuk. Per league sources, as of Monday night, the 49ers Steelers talks stalled, but there have been further conversation today in an ever fluid situation that still involves other teams as well. That's where we stand. We have NFL Network's Ian Rappaport saying all day today, the Steelers are still in this. The Steelers are still a member of this conversation when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk. ESPN's Adam Schefter comes out and says the Steelers are not involved. They're on their way out. They couldn't come up with the trade demands. Now they're back in it. Schefter says they're back in it. It is a good old-fashioned source off when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk and the Pittsburgh Steelers and what is currently happening. For those of you who are just getting this now for the first time, this is what's going on when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers wide receiver and what is happening in trade negotiations. It has become very apparent that a trade is likely, that it is more likely, to quote NFL Network's Tom Pelissero and Mike Garofalo, than re-signing or extending him this offseason in San Francisco. And the three frontrunners for that trade are the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Cleveland Browns, and the New England Patriots. We will dive into what is happening and where the Pittsburgh Steelers stand and what we have heard, because obviously you make phone calls and you try to get as much information as you possibly can during all of this chaotic hour. I just want to say one thing real quick. It is the second week of August, and as of 24 hours ago, I said, you know what? I think we might push that deadline back. Man, I wish I waited 24 hours, but I'll take the L on that one. That being said, all the craziness that is going on, we could break it down into three teams and where Aiyuk currently stands and why the Pittsburgh Steelers might make more sense. But from what I have an understanding of and somewhat of an interpretation of, is that the Pittsburgh Steelers have made a trade offer to the 49ers. It wasn't the best trade offer. It's nowhere near the trade offer that the Cleveland Browns or the New England Patriots have made to the 49ers. But at the same time, those other two teams have one big giant question. Is Brandon Aiyuk going to sign a long-term extension here, or is there going to be drama and these teams are going to give up massive amounts of compensation in return for a player who is a rental, which is not going to happen? Aiyuk does not want to play for the Cleveland Browns. You could guess that one. And he doesn't want to play for the New England Patriots. I think that one is very obvious. Pittsburgh would be the team that he would like to go to. They are a Super Bowl contender. They're a team that's on the rise. They have a young core, 2 talented quarterbacks, a new offensive coordinator. Everything makes sense for that trade to happen, on top of Mike Tomlin being the head coach, which always draws guys in. Now, if the Steelers are not going to up that offer, which we don't know if they have in the last couple of hours, it's going to be tough for the 49ers to say, we will give you lesser value, or we will take lesser value for Aiyuk because this is where he wants to go. But at the same time, Aiyuk might have the ball in his court to say, look, guys, I might not play. I'm not going to sign with you guys, and I'm not going to go to these other 2 teams. So maybe your only option is to go to the Pittsburgh Steelers, or to send me to the Pittsburgh Steelers. You've followed it as well as I have. We have talked nothing but it outside of the quarterback competition, which we will dive into after this, which is wild to say that we are going to talk about the first day of an actual quarterback competition after this. Your thoughts of everything as everything has been unfolding for the last just about 24 hours.
Yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been a very wild ride. But honestly, I think the biggest thing here is on Aiyuk. Because if the Pittsburgh Steelers aren't budging, or if they're not budging very much on their ask, from what we've heard, their ask is not near what Cleveland was going to offer, not near what New England was going to offer in trade packages. It comes down to Brandon Aiyuk because he doesn't have a no trade clause, but at the same time, it's the extension that you mentioned, yes, everybody's talking about. So I think that's a huge part in all of this. Is it seems like Aiyuk always wanted to go to either the Steelers or the Washington Commanders. And with the Commanders backing out, that means there's really one person at the dance that Aiyuk wants to go with, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's going to be a huge part of all of this. Is he going to back down from that, or is he going to stand true to that? If he stands true to that, I have no other option but to believe the Steelers are the favorite in this.
Yeah. So it's crazy to think about it, because if you think about the Cleveland Browns, they're $60 million over the salary cap in a year from now. $60 million. They pay quarterback Deshaun Watson over $60 million a year for the next 3 seasons, on top of Amari Cooper that they just signed an extension to, which means that they have to pay him this year. Myles Garrett, Zadarius Smith. There are so many names on that team that are getting paid major bucks that they do not have the room to, I believe, sign Aiyuk to a massive deal. I don't understand how they're even involved. Maybe that's just false. Maybe that's the 49ers leaking information that, teams do because they're trying to drive the price from Pittsburgh. I have no idea. But I look at it very simply and say, it's hard to believe that the 49ers and the Cleveland Browns are going to make something happen, because the Cleveland Browns have no cap space to make something happen with Brandon Aiyuk, and they're going to give up Amari Cooper that they just signed for a guy that they can't afford. That one doesn't make any sense to me. And when it comes to the New England Patriots, why would Aiyuk want to go there? Why are you going to one of the worst teams in football? I get it, the Washington Commanders, they have a young quarterback in Jaden Daniels who played with Brandon Aiyuk, obviously have the chemistry. A lot of guys believe in that guy. He's expected to be something crazy. When it comes to New England, I mean, Drake May is a question mark. You got a new head coach, and you were one of the worst teams in football last year and didn't make any moves that really excited anybody. Really hard to sit there and say that one's going to work out. I would say the Pittsburgh Steelers are the front runner, but if I had to guess right now where we currently stand, and look, I stand strong on that 70% that I gave last week and the week before that. I felt very good that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to land them. And I would say this: if a deal is going to get done, if he is going to be traded to any team, it's going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers. It is not going to be the other 2. I don't think the other 2 are legitimate contenders here. I just don't see it coming down to it. But I believe that if you had to take a guess at what's going to happen, him sticking in San Francisco is probably the most likely outcome of this, with the Pittsburgh Steelers trade being a number 2. So let me ask that question. What do you think they give up in a trade for Brandon Aiyuk?
I know we were talking on our walk over here, and part of what you said was, I don't know if it's even going to be a first. I feel like it has to be, especially because part of these other trade packages are a player that San Francisco reportedly wants. They want a player that's going to help them this year because they're going for a Super Bowl, and it makes sense. Mm-hmm. I don't think the Steelers are going to give up a player and a first, but I also feel like the first has to be included in that.
I agree. This is a good one. This one made me laugh. Because it would be it would
immediate
be fun. Could you imagine if Lynch was like, can we talk about TJ Watt? No. I would say a first round pick, possibly. And I think that it could get there. Okay. I think it could get there. I think it could include that. I don't believe the Steelers offered a first round pick. I don't think that as we sit here today, currently, that is the direction that the Pittsburgh Steelers win in. I could see a second round pick and something else, or a second round pick and a lower name player, or however it may be. I could also see where we currently stand. It could be James Daniels in a second, James Daniels in a third. I think that could be in the conversation. And Chris Halleck of DK Pittsburgh Sports was talking with us. He tossed that name out there, and he said that could work out. And then you say, okay, well, who's going to replace him? Maybe you start Zach Frazier, bounce Nate Herbig to the outside. That does make a lot of sense. I could see that being a reasonable expectation for the Steelers. Now, is that the best case scenario? I don't know. That's up to you to decide. Are you giving up your probably second best offensive lineman outside of Broderick Jones for a guy that's going to be here long term? Yeah, I think that makes sense in the eyes of a lot of people. And if you don't think James Daniels is going to stick around for longer in the season, then why not? And if you believe Nate Herbig could be a starter, which I think Nate Herbig has shown that he could be a starter, sure, Spencer Anderson could come in there and can compete. Zach Frazier is your starting center no matter what. I don't know, man. I think if that's the move, I'm kind of coming to grips with it, and I might be okay with James Daniels and a second round pick for Brandon Aiyuk. Maybe James Daniels a second and a fourth for Brandon Aiyuk. I think that makes some sense.
Yeah, and it's tough because a lot of this offseason, it's been the Pittsburgh Steelers building from the front back, right? They've spent 3 draft picks on the offensive line, but all that does is, one, it brings in obviously a massive talent in Brandon Aiyuk, and 2, it expedites the list and the idea that they have of whether it's Herbig, whether it's McCormick. It's expediting that process of getting somebody else in there. Now, it helps that you have Aiyuk, somebody who gets open very well, especially on quick routes. So maybe you don't have to hold on to the ball as long. Also, it helps that you might have, whether it's Broderick Jones or Troy Fautano, you're going to have a very athletic right tackle over there to help whoever that is. And then, of course, Zach Frazier in the middle, who's also shown today on a couple of, plays that he is very athletic as well. So you have a lot there. And I think that all that does is expedite what you're doing with these younger guys. But if the Steelers trusted Nate Herbig, to be their center coming into this year when he wasn't even a center last year before they drafted Frazier, I could see them being comfortable moving him over to start the season.
Yeah, I think that could be a possibility, and it makes sense. And if the 49ers are very hard strung on, we gotta go with this, then I mean, that's the player. I'm not giving up Alex Highsmith. I'm not even thinking about it. I've seen like FanDuel tossed out I think it was FanDuel. I hope I'm not getting that wrong, but I believe it was FanDuel tossed out like Calvin Austin. And I was like, I don't think the 49ers would even consider that. James Daniels makes the most sense. Omar's Burner with one hell of a comment here. And look at, I didn't follow Ricky, man. I refused to follow Ricky for the longest time. I hit that follow button at lunch today. I hit that follow button for Ricky the dog today. And I was like, man, you did it, man. You did it. Well-deserved. Good for them. What's your prediction? What do you think happens?
I mentioned it. If he's going anywhere, he's going to Pittsburgh. I don't see him going to the Browns. I don't see him go to New England. As far as whether or not it happens, what's San Francisco going to do? Fine him when he doesn't play in week 1? I think Aiyuk is sold on this, so I think it does happen.
So you think it does happen? What's your trade compensation?
I think it's probably Daniels and a second and another later round pick. I think Omar really wants that first round pick to stick around, hence why it probably wasn't in that initial trade package, but I think it's a second, Daniels, and another later round pick, whether that's this year or next year.
I like it. I'm going to, oh man. My prediction is that it happens, okay? And I don't feel great about that prediction, but to be honest, I haven't felt great about any of them to this point. It has been such a roller coaster ride that every time I talk to somebody and they give me information and I try to come up with a prediction about that, then, I mean, I just don't feel great. I'm always in here like, yeah, man, I'm like 70-30. Do I say this out loud or do I not say this out loud? That's where I stand right now, but I think it's going to happen. I think he's going to end up in Pittsburgh. I don't see how he doesn't end up in Pittsburgh. Things are just too hot and heavy right now. It is way too fiery, and the 49ers are they're looking to get rid of him. They're looking to get rid of him, and they're going to take what they can get. I firmly believe that the New England Patriots and Cleveland Browns reports are leaks from the 49ers to just drive the price up from Pittsburgh. It might work. It might not work. Trade compensation. I'm going to go James Daniels. I'm going to go James Daniels and 2 second-round picks. Second round this year and a second round next year. And I don't feel great about that move, but I feel better about that than giving up a first-round pick. I feel better about that than giving up, a first or Alex Highsmith or any of that. James Daniels and 2 second-round picks I feel good with. I'm going James Daniels, 2 seconds. That's what's going to happen. I don't feel great about that. So please, nobody interpret that as like Noah's pushing for James Daniels and 2 second-round picks. I'm simply saying what I believe is going to happen. And if I had to guess, that's what I believe is going to happen. Crazy times. All right, let's talk about the other side of today because, man, it was a wild one. Actually, let's answer all the Brandon Aiyuk questions first before we go and talk quarterback battle. That's how we should handle that.
All righty, let me look through and see which questions we have. This one, Aiden says, I'm torn on Aiyuk to the Steelers. Do they have the money to do it and still keep a good team around?
Yes, they very much so do. Now, obviously, the quarterback situation makes that troublesome or weary moving forward, but I think that you could pull that off. And I don't believe the Steelers are handing any quarterback $50 million over the next year, so they should be totally fine to make this happen. It might lead to questions with George Pickens, but who cares? You're not holding back on 1-star wide receiver for a guy who might turn into a star wide receiver, but also might cause so many issues that he runs himself out of town. It just isn't worth it. So yes, they can't afford it. They very much so can afford it, and they'll just have to figure out the quarterback situation. I believe that's why the first-round pick is more important, because if your quarterback situation doesn't work out this year, it's better to have a first-round pick next year and the option at a quarterback than it is to have a better wide receiver.
Let's go to Marlon, who says, what's the max you would get rid of for Brandon Aiyuk? So if the trade price kept going up, what is the max you would use to get rid of him?
The max I would get rid of, I mean, it depends on how you view it. Like, I view James Daniels and 2 second-round picks as more compensation than just a first-round pick up front, because, I mean, a first-round pick stinks, but that's 1 year, one and done. You keep your guard. You could figure that out. It's not ideal, but you could figure it out. I believe that you could look at it. Sorry, Adam Schefter's tweeting out Mike Tomlin. And if you guys haven't seen this, Mike Tomlin and the Steelers saw Brandon Aiyuk in one last season.
It's just a stat line. What he did against the Steelers.
Line. What are we doing with this source off? This is ridiculous, man. Now they're just looking for attention. I would say James Daniels and 2 second-round picks is more compensation in my eyes, and therefore that's the most I would give up for him.
Alexander wants to know, why does the national media act like the Steelers were never the clear choice? They kept bringing up random teams over Pittsburgh constantly. Also, shout out to Ricky the dog.
Ricky the dog, man. He knew. I think everybody knew, man. Like, I think there were a lot of us within the whole situation that, I mean, at one point, Brandon Aiyuk's agent called me a fake journalist, saying that I said trying to shut down any trade rumors, and he has been very quiet. So I think a lot of people got it wrong in this one, and then a lot of people got it right, man. And I mean, we were on here talking a week ago about my reports, Chris Alex reports, and how people were crapping all over them, and well, here we are. So shout out Ricky the dog, man. Hero.
We got a couple of people asking about why Brandon Aiyuk would want to come to Pittsburgh, not knowing the situation at starting quarterback. Captain Juice 3 and also Vibing with the Dogs want to know.
Yeah, I don't think that really matters. I mean, I understand it, but you have 2 good quarterbacks, and Russell Wilson is not viewed around the league as a bad quarterback. He's viewed around the league as a good quarterback with plenty of leadership and a guy who has a really good reputation outside of a couple of people in Seattle. So I think that the quarterback situation is very ideal for a guy like Brandon Aiyuk. You could come in here with a good offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith is super respected around the NFL, and Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, you feel good about whoever's out there. So that's a better quarterback situation than the other two options. Obviously, San Francisco is the most ideal situation when it comes to that offense, but I think that bridge might already be burned.
Let's go down to RC Smith's question. Says, what is to keep Brandon Aiyuk from causing trouble in Pittsburgh, aka a 2-year deal? That's all I would go with.
I don't think that he would cause trouble. I don't think Ayuk's going to cause trouble once he signs a deal. Now, obviously, the next time this is up, there's going to be trouble, and I understand that. And that's life in the NFL, and that's life with wide receivers. It's wild. I don't get it. I don't understand how they're constantly like this, but that's where they are. That being said, I would go 3-year deal. Wide receivers are 3-year deals. It brings them to 29, pushing 30. You could get rid of them then. You could probably trade them a year early and still get something for them. I think that's what I'm going with.
We got a couple more here on Aiyuk, then we'll move over to the quarterback situation. Nick Bowden says, any idea how soon this gets done?
I have no idea. If I had to guess, I'll give you my top 3 times that it will happen. The most inconvenient time of my day, which at any given day could be different. So, you just never know. But I would say that would be my first guess. My second guess would be when I'm driving somewhere. That's usually Steelers love to do it, man. I tell Mike Tomlin all the time, you love to do things while I'm in the car. And number 3 would easily be the middle of the night. That would be my 3 ideal times. If I had to guess, it happens probably by the end of tomorrow, possibly by the end of today. I think it's right on the verge. Like, the people were tweeting out like it's at the goal line. I don't believe it was at the goal line yesterday. I think by the end of the day today, it could be. But that's a guess. That's a complete guess.
Kaleo wants to know, and this is the last one, then we'll jump into the quarterback talk, says, I saw on Twitter 2 seconds and Calvin Austin, and then Roman plays the slot. Your thoughts on that hypothetical trade?
No. I mean, it makes sense, but I don't think the 49ers would go with it. So my problem with that is like Calvin's not proven in the NFL guy, and the 49ers have Calvins. They have Danny Gray, they have Ricky Pearsall, they have the guys that could be a Calvin Austin. If these tweets about the 49ers do not stop, this is getting ridiculous, man. I don't think that 2 seconds and Calvin gets the job done. I think 2 seconds and a bigger name player gets the job done, but I don't think Calvin's big enough outside of Pittsburgh.
All right, let's jump into the quarterback talk then.
All right, let's do it. So outside of 7 million tweets about the San Francisco 49ers that mean literally nothing, the biggest news of the day was the quarterback competition. And Justin Fields and Russell Wilson, for the first time, went head-to-head, and it really was head-to-head. It was awesome. Russell Wilson returned to, I would say, almost full, not full, but almost full participation. Him and Justin Fields traded off pretty much every single other rep for team and 7-on-7 and 7 shots, which is the first time we saw Russell Wilson for any of that. And they look pretty good. I have the numbers here. Russ finished the day in team going 3 for 4. Justin went 7 for 7. Justin also went perfect in 7-and-7, 7-on-7. And Russ missed 1 going 6 for 5 or 5 for 6 on 7-on-7. So not the most ideal or the biggest passing day for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but certainly a ramp up. Nick, I think your mic needs to be tilted towards you a little bit because I'm hearing myself on it. So I'm still hearing myself a little bit. Are we still hearing an echo?
I'll just mute when you're talking.
Yeah, that makes sense. When these two took the field, it was both first team reps. And my biggest thought was instantly, okay, pole position is a thing, and Russell Wilson is still the guy that has the lead. But Justin Fields certainly took some steps forward. And in my head, 100% has built himself up into a real quarterback competition, one that the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to decide who the better option is instead of handing the job to Russell Wilson, which I was all about handing the job to Russell Wilson coming into training camp. There was no reason not to unless Justin Fields lit it up. After missing some time and Justin Fields showing that he could take steps forward, I'm all about it. So I'm all about an open competition. I think Justin Fields might have the upper hand by the end of this thing. I don't know. Your thoughts? You were here. I'm going to let you talk a little bit. What were your thoughts on today's quarterback competition?
Yeah, the first thing we saw was Russell Wilson going out there, and he said, all right, well, it's probably going to be a run. And he pulled back, threw a pass, and I said, all right, well, I guess we're on now. This is officially starting. And it was exactly what we kind of talked about was Russell's going to be given the first opportunity. He's going to go out there first, but it's going to be 50-50. And they're going to say, who does better? Who outperforms who? Because Justin has, with his performance, and rightfully so in the past couple of weeks, he's earned an opportunity to be in this conversation. He's earned an opportunity to get reps, to have it be 50-50, or at the very least be close to 50-50. And that was the one thing that was shocking today. Even in 7 shots, they had 7 shots, but they threw Kyle Allen in for 1 play to make sure it was 50-50. So we got a true quarterback competition here. And I thought, today it was pretty evident that they want to make sure that both of these guys get in a lot of work and just basically say who's going to outdo the other. And I thought that was kind of what we talked about yesterday, and certainly fun to see it in practice.
Yeah, it definitely was nice to see these guys button heads and going off on each other. And I think it ramps up. Like by the end of the week, I don't expect this to be as even as it was today. Like I think Russ is gonna. Now Josina Anderson's tweeting the same stuff. Same stuff. Steelers and 49ers are involved in talks over Brandon Aiyuk, again, per source. Like, are there really sources at this point? Or is this Twitter sources? This is wild. This is wild times. The way I look at it is I don't believe that this is going to stay as even throughout the week, but I do think that this is a good first start. And I thought Russ looked good. Like Russ has had some days where it's like, okay, that wasn't the best pass. That wasn't the best pass. I think right now where we stand with the whole situation is that Russ came in here and showed that, yeah, this could be a very even quarterback competition. Now it's just a matter of who's going to be the best. And that's what I love to see. Like, that's what excites me about the situation is nobody looked bad today. There wasn't a clear cut anything. Like when this was Mitch versus Kenny, it was bad versus Kenny. It was bad versus Kenny with a splash of Mason. Like it never got good. Right now where we stand, this is good. I think it's a good situation to be in for the Pittsburgh Steelers. There's a lot of questions about where or what happens on Friday. Does Russ get any reps? I don't expect Russ to play in the preseason game on Friday. I don't know if that could change by Friday, but I don't believe, for one, that Russ needs a preseason. I don't think a preseason could win him the job, but I also think it could lose him the job if Russ goes out or if Justin goes out there and balls out. But with the injury, you're not going to risk it, and you're more so going to look at it and say Russ needs to be cautious, and this is how we keep things cautious. So I would not expect him to play, but I do think that he gets more reps and a bigger opportunity to prove himself throughout the week, and we'll see what goes from there. I also think it's way too early. Like one day is not enough in my eyes to decide who's winning this quarterback competition or anything like that. I said it yesterday and I'll say it again today. It was very good that Russ was out here, because if he wasn't, I was starting to lean towards Justin. But Russ is out here. Now it's even. Now we go from here, and so on and so forth. So I'm a big fan of what's going on out there. But again, it's early, and I'm excited that it's early, but we'll take it from there. I think that's all I got on the quarterback competition. There's not really a ton outside of some questions, so I do want to answer some questions. And I'm sure that we got more Brandon Aiyuk. With that said, toss your questions in the chat. We'll answer all of them before we head out of here. What do we got?
Let's go back and start with Vibin' with the Dogs, who says, with Russ back, do you expect him to play Friday? I guess we just talked about this.
We just answered this.
Or will Fields get the start? You mentioned that you don't expect Russ to start, especially after going for his first full day on a Tuesday and the game being on a Friday.
Yeah, I don't think Russ plays on Friday. I believe that it'll be Justin, Kyle Allen. You'll get like 2 series of John Rice Plumlee, and that'll be it. But Justin Fields versus CJ Stroud will be fun to watch.
Let's go to Jordan's question, who says, has Chris Boswell been looking better since the last reports?
No. Big no. Although he kicked today, and I don't think he missed one. So I guess yes, but last practice he was not good. That being said, it's Chris Boswell, man. I'm not like worried about him. If the Steelers aren't worried about him, I'm not worried about him. When they are, that's when I will be.
Let's go to Anonymous 2's question that says, Noah, how can you know in advance what the practices or whether they'll be padded or not? I went out last Thursday and they were unpadded, which was cool, but I want to see some of this physicality.
Yeah, you kind of just guess, you get a system going after a while. Like you knew that Friday Night Lights is always padded. When the first day of pads is because it's scheduled. And you kind of know, like, most Tuesdays they'll come out here and be padded because they get a day off on Monday. But besides that, it's kind of just a guess, man. I don't really know how to predict it, and most times I don't.
Let's go over to Turk Hollinger, who says, I know you're not playing favorites, LOL, but how did Russ look out there today?
I think he looked good. I don't think he looked the best, but I think he looked good. He had one pass and 7 shots. It was his first pass, actually, to George Pickens. That was a beautiful lob in the corner of the end zone. I thought that was perfect. Besides that, he looked good. Like it wasn't a very big passing day for the offense, so it was hard to really judge. But yeah, it was it was a good day for Russ.
Let's go to Stephen Burns' question, who says, Noah and Nick, I have to believe that Arthur Smith will have to work in some packages for Justin Fields since Russ will be the starter. I don't want to get into a 2-quarterback mess, but Fields can't sit.
Yeah, I don't think that you could sit Justin Fields either. Like, I just don't. If Russ is going to be your guy, which I'm full support, if Russ is the guy, I think that he'll win that competition. If he does win that competition, he deserves to win that competition. But Justin's athleticism is just undeniable, and you can't keep that on the field or off the field. So I believe it will happen. I think Arthur Smith will have some packages ready to go. What those packages are, we'll wait and see. And when they'll be used, we'll wait and see. But I do think it's going to happen.
Let's go to DKB17, who says, if we cut 84, a.k.a. Cordero Patterson, who is the running back 3, or will we just keep a couple guys on the practice squad? Little Hayward also started as a running back in college.
I think if you cut Cordero Patterson, your running back 3 would be Jonathan Ward right now. Veteran in the NFL, could play special teams. He's looked kind of impressive from time to time. Like today, he had a burst that I wrote down for 30+ yards, like around the edge, looked real good. Outran a bunch of people. So I would say he's the leader. LaMichael P. Ryan and Aaron Shumklin would be next on that list. I don't think Connor Hayward's a running back in the NFL. I just don't.
Let's go to Ryan's question. He says, how's Zach Frazier doing? Notice he wasn't on your winners/middle/losers list that came out the other day.
Yeah, this is the best thing I could say about Zach Frazier is I was talking to, or we were talking to Arthur Smith, the media was, and he said, there are times where I don't realize Zach Frazier's out there, and that's good. That's what you want out of an offensive lineman. You never want to realize they're out there because that means that they're not making mistakes. I think he looks good. He's come a long way since the start of all this. Like the Troy Fautanu thing it's up in the air on whether or not he's going to start. I think Zach Frazier's going to start. Like, it's hard for me to deny that he's going to be out there and not start. He looks good. And for you West Virginia fans, he bulldozed Beanie Bishop today, and it was some West Virginia and West Virginia crime, but it was a good time to watch.
It was funny because he smiled after he did that as well and was laughing the whole way back to the huddle.
He did.
Let's go to Marlon's question that says, should we rotate by series in the preseason once Russell does get in? That way we can gauge who runs the offense better, but Fields has done enough to make it interesting.
No, not series by series. Quarter by quarter, maybe you give both of them a full quarter. I don't know if Russ is going to like play more than like 2 series in the preseason unless it's really coming down to like got to decide today what's going to happen. But I don't know series by series. I would say because it doesn't give you enough. Like you're trying to run the whole offense. You're not just trying to figure what's going on with the quarterbacks. You want to figure out the offensive line and the running game and Pat Freiermuth and so many other things. So you need to give them a full quarter. I would say quarter and quarter.
Let's go to Turk's question. He says, I'm still looking around the AST store. How much longer in the field for the field shirt? I'm honestly excited to see both quarterbacks play this year.
Yeah. The field shirt's coming. The field shirt is coming. There was no need to create a Justin Fields shirt. Now there's a need. So the field shirt is coming. We got some good ones in the works, to be honest with you. We got some good ones in the works. They're coming soon.
Let's go to Captain Juice again. He says, which quarterback do you think brings a higher ceiling for the Pittsburgh Steelers? And do you think that's who the Steelers end up going with?
Okay, so that's a very tough question. It's a good question. It's a really good question. It's a tough one, though. I think Justin Fields gives the Steelers more potential all around. Like, I believe that Justin Fields is as good of an improviser as they come, and his feet are crazy. I think when it comes to being a contender and keeping your team afloat and not screwing up, Russell Wilson's probably the safer bet, which sometimes, a lot of times, gives you the higher ceiling. Like being a reliable game manager is something that the NFL has started to really grow on, and Russ can be that guy. So I think in both lights, there's a higher ceiling. Do I think the Steelers go with him? If I had to guess, Russell Wilson's the week 1 starter right now, but I will say that my belief that Justin could pull this off is growing rapidly and will continue to grow until proven otherwise.
Evan wants to know, how consistently is Justin Fields throwing the middle of the field? Is it something, because it's something he hardly did in Chicago?
Yeah, the Steelers offense is very middle of the field involved. It's very heavy. It allows George Pickens to catch the football and make moves. It allows Pat Freiermuth to be very, very involved with this offense. Calvin Austin, a lot of those. Darnell Washington's a middle of the field guy. Even Jaylen Warren kind of passed across the middle of the field today. So yeah, Justin's doing fine over the middle of the field. Justin's biggest thing is not where he's throwing the football. It's more so how quickly he's throwing the football. He's really, I don't want to say struggling, but he needs to improve on how quickly he gets the ball out of his hand, because it's almost like he's hesitant to throw it, and that's where he's going to mess up. So that would be my only issue with Justin so far.
Inferno wants to know, any chance Najee or Warren will be good fantasy options, or will they split time too much?
So that's a good question. I would say Najee's the better fantasy bet because I think he's going to be used in the goal line more. Jaylen Warren could be involved and he could have a crazy season, but Najee's my go-to with fantasy because I think he's going to be touchdown heavy this year, especially with Jack Coletto if he makes the team.
Yeah, make that decision and make that draft pick knowing what happened to everybody who drafted Bijan Robinson last year.
Yeah, and no, I would not rely on that. Two totally different offenses, two totally different situations with Arthur Smith. I'm not leaning on anything that Arthur Smith did as a head coach to compare to what he did as an offensive coordinator. Two totally different jobs. So I think they'd be fine.
Offsides Edits has a tough one here for us. Says, what are your record predictions for the Steelers without Brandon Aiyuk, and if the Steelers are able to acquire the star wide receiver?
Oh, that is also a good question. Maybe it increases it like a game or two, a win or two, but I don't think it really changes that much. I think the Steelers are a winning team no matter what. I think they're very good. I would say the Steelers are, a 10-win team without Aiyuk and maybe a 10 or 11-win team with him.
Yeah, I gave them 11 wins when we did our record prediction, so I think I'd probably stick there or maybe bump up one. But I think it's the playoffs whenever you really see that difference for the Steelers. It's not as much the regular season as it is once they get into the postseason having that capability.
Yeah, I agree. That's when it becomes like it's more so, it's not what their record's going to be. It's how big of a contender are they? And they're a much bigger contender with Brandon Aiyuk.
Let's go to X Concepts, who says, what is Daniel's trade value in your opinion by himself without it being in a Brandon Aiyuk trade?
I don't know, maybe a 3rd-round pick. That's what you could probably get for him. Maybe you could get a second for a team that feels they're definitely going to resign him and he's young and they're looking for that guy. I would say a 3rd or a 2nd max. I would probably lean more heavy into the 3rd.
Let's go to Uncut, who says, how are the cornerbacks doing?
The cornerbacks look good. I mean, Joey Porter's Joey Porter. I expect a big 2nd-year lead from him. Dante Jackson's an animal. I love Dante Jackson. I think he's a phenomenal piece to this defense. Beanie Bishop he's killing it out there. Corey Trice got some runs with the ones in the dime package today. That was awesome to see. So he's starting to come along. The corners look good, man. The corners look really good.
Let's go to Captain Juice again, who says, which quarterback? I think we already answered this one. He must have put it in there twice. Let's go to Mojo Rider, who says, hey, fellas, what about Peyton Wilson? What have you seen from the rookie out of NC State?
Yeah, Peyton Wilson's looked good all camp. There hasn't been a moment where he hasn't looked good. Big Peyton Wilson guy. I think he's going to be the 3rd inside linebacker on the field, and I think he's a reason that you don't really have to rush Cole Holcomb back if you're going to look for Cole Holcomb to come back at all. So big Peyton Wilson guy. Guy looks like a gazelle. That's what I keep saying. He's so fast and big and long out there.
Yeah, he almost ran me over on the sideline today, so I appreciate him sidestepping because, as you said, they're more athletic than we will ever be. So I appreciate him not, sending me to the hospital on my first day at camp.
Yeah, true. Would have been a good story, though.
Would have been great for the website. Let's go to Mike Naples' question. He says, if we do get Brandon Aiyuk, do you think he becomes wide receiver 1 or wide receiver 2? And do you think him or George will get the double coverage more?
I think he becomes wide receiver 1. And when it comes to who gets double covered more, I think it splits. I don't think it's going to be one or the other. It'll be harder for defenses to double both of them. So I would say I would say it's still pretty even with the double teams, but I do think Brandon Aiyuk becomes wide receiver 1.
Let's go to Lifted Ones, who says, who has a bigger legacy in Pittsburgh, Mason Rudolph or Duck Hodges, excluding recency bias?
I mean, the bigger legacy is Duck Hodges. Easy. I mean, Mason Rudolph's legacy in Pittsburgh is a terrible one. And that stinks because Mason Rudolph had some upside, man. And I mean, he was bad at first, but he came through. He looked like a professional, and now he looks good in Tennessee. So it's Duck. It's definitely Duck. People will remember Duck Hodges for years to come. They will not remember Mason Rudolph, unfortunately.
Let's go to another question here that says, does Russell's playoff experience make it harder to bite the bullet on starting Justin instead, especially with the recent playoff struggles the Steelers have gone through?
Yes, I think that's the biggest reason for the pole position whole thing is that the Steelers want someone who they know for certain is going to be reliable down the stretch and in the playoffs, and that's Russell Wilson. And at least that's Russell Wilson on the resume, and that's what Mike Tomlin's looking at. Do I think that's the best way to go about it? No, but do I think that that's how they feel? Yes. Yes, I do.
Let's go over to Andy's question that says, is Bill Burr, a.k.a. Cameron Johnston, going to be better than Presley Harvin III?
I'm going to ask you, I'm going to send that one to you. You saw your first action of Cameron Johnston today. What were your thoughts?
I'll tell you, he booms the ball. Every time he kicked it, I mean, we were in a conversation. I'm sorry, I did not listen to one word you said in that conversation because I just kept looking up. And I was like, geez. And obviously, Cam Sutton, you got a couple of guys down there catching punts. There were a couple that I feel like Cameron Johnston knows where the sun is, and most NFL punters probably do, but every time Cameron Sutton went up there, I think Cameron Johnston was messing with him because he put it right in the sun.
Yeah, he was. He was. Cameron Johnston's going to be real good. He is real good. He's a veteran. He's been in this league for a long time. He looks good.
Let's go to our next question here from Nick Soto, who says, what do you think about Cole Holcomb's situation as a whole right now?
I mean, right now it's just kind of a wait and see. I don't expect him to play this season. I think that was the hint that the Steelers gave us with the contract renegotiation is we got a good one for you coming in a second here, guys. The Cole Holcomb situation, I think that them restructuring the contract meant that they were creating some cap space to bench him for the rest of or put him on IR for the rest of the season. It stinks, but I mean, it's better that they're keeping him because I think he has potential once he's healthy, and I would like to see that potential. But that being said, I don't expect him to play in 2024. All right, before we go on, we got another one. Here we go. This is what 49ers coach Kyle Shanahan said about rumors about a potential Brandon Aiyuk trade. Question: Do you need Aiyuk's situation to be resolved pretty quickly or pretty soon? Quote: no, I mean, you also want it to be resolved badly, but this stuff does take time. Every day I hope it gets resolved, but I have no timetable on it. Didn't surprise me coming into this. I'm going about coaching our team, getting them ready for week 1, and hopefully it'll get resolved sooner rather than later. Follow-up question: is there a scenario where you do a long-term deal with him? There's a scenario for anything, so I don't want to rule anything out. Is your team better with Aiyuk? Brandon's a great player, so it's real hard to be better when you lose a great player. So we've got to look at anything. We've got to understand the situation we're in and what that looks like, and that does take time. Hopefully it'll all work out best for him and best for us in the long run. That was boring, but it does make me think maybe the anything thing was a big one.
Yeah, the one thing that I caught out of all of that long excerpt from Kyle Shanahan is Mike Tomlin really is judicious with his speech, because that would have been I'm focused on players that are on the field today. That's all you would have gotten out of Mike Tomlin in that questioning.
Yeah, 100%. The updates that are coming are just wild. This is just annoying. At this point, just happen. Just make it happen. All right, let's keep answering questions.
Let's go to Inferno, who says, what do you think is the biggest weakness for the Steelers that people are not talking about?
that people are not talking about? That's a good question. So we'll rule wide receiver out of that one. The biggest weakness that they're not talking about. Dude, that's a very tough question to answer. I would say I don't know, because they addressed it with Marcus Golden with the depth on the outside linebacker. I don't think there is one. If we're gonna be honest, the Steelers are a pretty good looking team right now. I guess backup corner is where you're kind of feeling iffy. But once Cam Sutton comes back, you're totally fine there. Same with safety. Once Cam Sutton comes back, you're totally fine. Thomas Graham looked good today, so maybe that's a sneaker for to get onto the roster. I don't know. I would say backup corner, like the secondary. The secondary depth is probably the second biggest weakness on this team.
Let's go to Steeler Man 47, who says, haven't heard much about Minkah Fitzpatrick. What's been happening with him at practice?
I mean, he looks like Minkah. He's doing Minkah things. He looks totally fine. There's no worries about Minkah. Like, people try to make a big deal out of like him not practicing as much, and he said it himself. He was like, guys, Mike Tomlin's got to save me from myself sometimes because I go a million miles an hour at all times. That's just Minkah. I'm not worried about it. He looks like Minkah, and I think Minka's going to have a massive year.
Let's go to Stephen A., who says, just got here. Not sure if you mentioned this, but how concerned should we be about Alex Highsmith's injury?
I saw Alex Highsmith walking around the cafeteria like an hour and a half ago. Didn't have a limp, didn't have anything on his hamstring. I think that's totally fine. It's an early in training camp situation. So what that means is he's not going to play in the preseason game on Friday. He might not practice for the rest of the week, but I don't think it's that big of a deal currently. Now, if this happened closer to the season, issue. I think right now it's just you let him heal and you don't put him back on the field until he is healed, which is totally fine.
Let's go to Payne, who says, are you going to be at Sharky's tonight, Noah?
I am not going to be at Sharky's tonight. I actually haven't made it to Sharky's yet during training camp this season. A little bit bummed out, but we're moving into a new house. So, I can't leave the wife home being like, hey, I'm going to go get drunk. You have a good time moving beds. So, unfortunately, I got to go home.
Let's go to Brian, who says, does Muth get over 600 yards this season?
Yeah, I think he gets close to 1,000. I think this is a close to 1,000-yard year for Pat Freiermuth. That guy looks so impressive. He's the most impressive person on the Steelers training camp roster right now, hands down. Yeah, I would say over 600 yards for sure.
Let's go to Alexander's question, or more of a statement here, says, Kenny Pickett, who's most likely going to end up being quarterback 3 for the Eagles. I guess Alexander saw Elliott Shore-Parks' tweet for Peyton Wilson, who could end up being a legacy move for Omar Khan. What are your thoughts?
I don't know about a legacy move, but a good move for sure. A good move for sure. It was a smart move to move on instantly. Don't create any drama. That's something that Kevin Colbert would have stuck it out and tried to make things. And I love Kevin Colbert. He's a phenomenal human being and a Hall of Fame general manager. His last couple of years were not the same as his first 20. But I do believe pretty firmly that he would have held on to Kenny and tried to make it work and worked it out. Omar said, get him out of here. Who cares? That's a phenomenal move. That's the next generation of football. And that's why Omar Khan is already one of the best in the league.
Let's go to Sean's question that says, since Cole might not play this year, would you sign Quan Alexander for some insurance at middle linebacker?
I think right now I would hold off and let Tyler Matakevich kind of get a shot and see if he could be the 4th inside linebacker, see what you got in Mark Robinson as a 4th. Like the 4th linebacker doesn't play much. The 3rd one does. If this was the 3rd inside linebacker, yeah, I'm going to sign him, but you have 3 of them. They're going to play all the time. If something happens, Quan's the first guy I'm calling, but for right now, I'm kind of sticking with what they got.
Let's go to Nick Soto, who says, would you put the Steelers as a top 5 defensive team in the National Football League?
I think right now they're top 10. They have the opportunity to get into the top 5, but it's August, so we have no idea what's going to happen. But right now I'd say on paper, yeah, they're pretty close to the top 5 for sure.
Let's go to Scott Atkins, who says, is this the year the Steelers score in the 30s in double-digit games? The Steelers have to get in a spot when they can win despite their defense instead of always winning because of the defense.
Yeah, I don't know about double-digit games. That's tough. I would say over 20 points, though. Over 24 points in double-digit games. That's for certain. I would say they scored 28 points. I would say 30. I could see like a 5, 6, maybe 7 times. Double digits is a lot of games. Scoring's down in the NFL, so you got to remember that one. But I would say, yeah, they're definitely averaging over 24 points a game this season, which is winning material in the NFL.
Yeah, TJ Watt always says, give me 20. And that's the one thing I'm looking at. The Steelers will get over 20 points double-digit times. I think that's the bar that they need to be at because of how good that defense is, to go back to the last question.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Let's go to Reynaldo, who says, my question is, who are the Steelers willing to sacrifice for Brandon Aiyuk, for those who weren't here early in the episode?
I would say it's James Daniels is probably the top of that list. I wouldn't say it's the best move, but I think you give up James Daniels and a pick or two and make it work and avoid a first-round pick. He's probably the only guy, to be honest with you, that I feel very comfortable with. That, honestly, the only guy that I think on this roster makes sense for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Let's go to Jack the Goat, who says, haven't heard anything about Patrick Queen so far. Is there any news surrounding him?
No, he hasn't practiced in a couple of days. He's just been dealing with something. He's working on the sideline and doing individual drills and that kind of stuff. But for the most part, he's just kind of rehabbing whatever he's dealing with. He looks good, though. His closing speed's nuts. When he's out on the field, he's super athletic and he knows how to lead the defense. So it's better to let him rest and rehab, and then they'll get him back out there.
Let's go to Tony Falbo, who says, how many jet sweeps are allowed before we call for Arthur Smith's job?
I think the first one would be enough. I think the jet sweep is a very valuable play in the NFL when run the correct amount of times. 8 times a game is not the correct amount of times, but once a game, twice a game, if you're really crazy feeling it, good, then take a week or 2 off. I think that works. More than 2 times a game, start the chance.
Let's go to iUltra, who says, does Darnell Washington have a breakout year under Arthur Smith this season? 2 tight end packages.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know if it's going to be a massive receiving year for him. I think he gets a better receiving year than he did in his rookie year. But yeah, he's going to be so involved. It's going to be crazy. Yeah.
Let's go to Anthony's question, who says, how's Troy Fautanu been in training camp so far? Has he been looking good?
So Troy Fautanu took first-team reps all day today. It's mostly because Broderick Jones is dealing with an elbow injury, but he took first-team reps all day today, and that's a step in the right direction at right tackle. So that's what you want to see. I don't know. I've been back and forth on Troy Fautanu, but if the Steelers feel he's moving up, I feel good about it. So I'm going to trust them.
Let's go to Pittsburgh Heather, who says, as of today, who is the starting left tackle? Will that change by game 1 of the regular season?
After today, I'm starting to feel like yes. If Troy's taking first-team reps and Broderick's going to play second-team reps over on the left side, eventually Broderick's going to play first-team reps over on the left side. So I would say my guess is Broderick Jones. It changed. Today was the day it changed, but I would say my guess has changed to Broderick Jones.
Inferno SRT says, what Olympic sport would both of you be most competitive in?
Is sleeping an Olympic sport?
Maybe really 2028.
I'd be really good at that one. I would be really competitive in 0 of the Olympic sports. I'm 5'8" and about 190 pounds and have very minimum athletic ability. So I'm not good at the cool ones, like ping pong. Suck at ping pong. Badminton, although I did win a high school in-school tournament for badminton. So maybe. I'll tell you this. The one that I would want to compete in is the shooting one where they do the discs and then that one was crazy. Watching that was nuts. And I would feel like I'm any crazy what's his name? 007.
James Bond
movie. That's how I feel with that power. So that's what I would want to do.
I'm still waiting for them to put Can Jam in there, because Can Jam, nobody can beat me in Can Jam. But for Olympic sports that are actually being played right now in Paris, I'm going to go beach volleyball. I'm pretty good at beach volleyball. So
there you go.
I'm tall, so I can't spike, but I'll keep the ball alive.
You get the rest of them. Yeah,
exactly.
I like that a lot.
Let's go to Pittsburgh Heather, who says, who wears the green dot for the Steelers on defense this year?
It'll be Patrick Queen. When Patrick Queen's not in there, it'll be a Landon Roberts. That's how that'll work. But yeah, right now it's Patrick Queen.
Tristan wants to know, is Justin Simmons a possibility for the Steelers this season?
No, he is not. He's too expensive. He wants too much money from what I've heard, and the Steelers they're comfortable with Deshaun Elliott and DeMonte KZ, so I would think they're totally fine. Justin Simmons, no, I don't think is on their radar.
PJ wants to know, is this the year where the defense is actually dominant instead of being bend and don't break?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. The problem in years past, like, I don't know if that was an insult to the defense. I'm not going to take it as it, so I don't want to put words in your mouth, PJ. But the problem in years past is just that they're exhausted. Like, could you imagine having to work with that offense and go 3 and out, 3 and out, 3? Like, anytime the offense got a first down in the last 2 years, you were kind of like, wow, that's pretty crazy. Like, had zero expectations that would happen. So, yeah, I would say they're exhausted.
We got a couple more here. Let's go to Alexander's question next, saying, how aware are players of trade rumors? Cam Hayward's reaction to a fan suggesting he could be included in a trade package last night was hilarious.
So some guys are on social media, some guys are not. Cam Hayward in the last year has become very, very heavily involved on social media, so he's going to hear everything. But like Calvin Austin today was like, dude, I have no idea what's going on. So you get some guys that know, some guys that don't. Cam's somebody. I mean, Cam's really close to the end, and because of that, he's ready to get into the media. So he's got to be pretty up to date with all that stuff.
Let's go to Scott's question here, who says, does Justin Fields come into play inside the 5-yard line, regardless of whether or not he's the starting QB?
Yes, because at that point, you literally just run read options and I formation, and I feel very confident that both of them will work every single time. So, yes, my answer is yes.
Let's go to Nick's question, who says, do you think the Steelers' O-line is better this year than it was last year?
Yes. Oh, gosh, yes. Oh, yes. Yes. And I think as I laugh, you laugh too, because, like, Nick, you already know. Like, as I said that, you're going, yeah, Mason Rudolph or Mason Cole. Yeah. That's true. That's a big one. Chukwueze Okorafor. That's a big one. So, yes, massively improved, like significantly better.
And even the depth as well. You have a lot of guys that took a big leap between last year and this year. I mean, Dylan Cook's a name that not a lot of people know, but it's going to be nice to have a Dylan Cook in your rotation as a backup that can bounce around different spots. So a lot of good depth as well for the Steelers offensive line.
100%. 100%.
Let's answer two more here. We have RC Smith, who says, do you think we're going to have 2 lockdown corners this year? Talking obviously about Dante Jackson.
Yes. I think Dante Jackson's so good. Like, I'm very impressed with what I've seen. And I think that this is the first time that'll be on a team where he could get that recognition, which is awesome. I think that was the thing, is people were like, Dante Jackson, why would you trade a wide receiver for a corner? Straight up, it doesn't make any sense. I understand that the positional value is totally different, but what the Steelers got, especially if they could pull off a Brandon Aiyuk trade, I mean, you got another starting corner that's very reliable and makes this defense complete. So, yeah, massive. I think that he's going to have a great year.
Let's close it off with this one from Kyle. He says, what is the latest update on wide receiver Roman Wilson?
As of today, he's out of the boot, which is good. Walking around with like just it's not even a soft cast. It's almost like a wrap on his ankle. I don't know when to expect him back. I would imagine next week he might get a little bit of work in, but a sprain is so difficult because you're dealing with something that like you can't fix. You just have to wait for it to stop hurting. Ankle sprains are the worst in the NFL. So I don't know, but that's where we stand currently, is that he's out of the boot, which is a good step forward.
That's a wrap for today then.
Awesome. With that said, guys, we are going to head out of here. And as we do, we can almost guarantee that the Brandon Aiyuk trade news will happen pretty rapidly, because that's what happens when we do these types of things. But we had a blast talking about it with you guys. Thank you so much for jumping on to another episode of All Steelers Talk live from St. Vincent College in Latrobe, Pennsylvania. Make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube, youtube.com/All Steelers Talk. Check us out anywhere you get your podcasts. And as always, please find all of our work at si.com/NFL/Steelers. We will be back tomorrow, hopefully, with a breaking news emergency press conference, or emergency podcast, about the Pittsburgh Steelers and a massive move that comes their way at the wide receiver position. I can't get my words out. I'm thinking I got Brandon Aiyuk on the brain, guys. Brandon Aiyuk on the brain. With that said, enjoy another beautiful day in the Berg. Peace.